country's hit a new freaking low. I never thought I'd see it. Not for something like this. And I wanted to make a video right away, and I was very angry, very sad, very upset. But I knew I would say something that would get me in trouble or get me banned from YouTube if I didn't stop for a minute. My personal opinions aside about Justin Trudeau, I hate what he's done to this country. I think he's trying to be his father, and that's not saying much. His father was one of the worst prime ministers we ever had. Running the deficit he did. You know, he invoked the War Measures Act in 1970, but that was with just cause. The only difference between him and his father is his father knew he was an asshole, and he didn't care. Trudeau is... Oh, man, it just makes me angry. I wanted to... anyways, for those of you who don't know, the Emergency Measures Act has been activated. That replaced the War Measures Act. This is the fourth time in Canadian history that this has been activated. And some of you like, oh, I don't care. What the hell is that supposed to mean? It doesn't mean nothing to me. Well, it should. The first two times it was activated was during the World Wars, and rightfully so. We didn't know who was living here that was our friend and who wasn't our friend, especially after Pearl Harbor got bombed and Japan got in the war. You know, we took a lot of people, Japanese, off the street and put them in prisoner war camps because we just didn't know. The other time was in 1970 when we had terrorist acts on Canadian soil. The FLQ blowing up, I think it was post offices or something around the country, and that had to be done. But to activate this act because of a bunch of protesters, and the fact of being that, you know, the CBC reports the horrible things they're doing, it's such a minute... this many out of 1 million people are causing the trouble, and those are the ones you report on. What's wrong with you as a leader of this country? You have to suspend our charters of rights and freedoms to deal with a bunch of protesters. If they're breaking the law and the court orders that they be removed from the bridge, then the RCMP and OPP can take them off the bridge. I wish you acted this quick every time there'd be a native blockade on a Highway 6 or a major highway or a rail line when natives block that up. But no, that goes on for days and days and days and weeks and months. The Emergency Measures Act or the War Measures Act, whatever, it should be, if I remember, I wrote it down from my school days, it should be invoked if there's a public welfare emergency, which means if there's massive wildfires that took over the country or some sort of natural or man-made disaster that put the country in jeopardy, the act is to be invoked. If there's a public order emergency, like there's national security issues. Don't tell me these protesters are a national security issue. Then it can be invoked. And then there's an international emergency, it can be invoked, and of course the wars. There's a war emergency. To invoke this, people don't realize what this does. This suspends your charters of rights and freedoms as a whole. Despite what people may say or may think, this gives sweeping power to the authorities to do what they will. And sure, there's times maybe that has to be done. I disagree with ever having that to be done, but there might even be times that justify. This is not one of those times. To suspend your charter of rights and freedoms because people are protesting and you can't get them off the bridge, you have to be... He tried to do this too when the pandemic started. He tried to invoke this, but most of the premiers across the country said, no, there's no way in hell. Whether they all did this time or not. This is disgusting. This borders on Orwellian. And I'm so proud of all these people standing up for protesting. Whether it's a vaccine, whether it's against Trudeau, whether it's against or what. Canadians are so fucking polite. They're the first to complain and the last to do anything about it. I'm so proud of my Canadian brothers and sisters to stand up and hear their voice. It doesn't matter what they're saying, at least they're standing up in one voice and saying enough is enough. I can't urge. I'm going to make it my personal issue to make sure when the next election comes around to change as many people and make many as people as I can understand to not vote for this asshole again. Whether you think he's got a pretty smile or not, he's fucked up this country on a national level with free trade with countries. He's a laughingstock in the international community. Heads of state don't even want to deal with this guy. And yet, look what he's doing. He's taking away your rights and freedoms because of protesters. This is ridiculous. This is unprecedented. I'm angry. I'm upset. And you should be too. I don't understand how he's getting away with this and what justification he has to do this. He needs to get out of office. And I hope to hell that come next election time, you stand up with the rest of us and say, enough is enough, you bozo. This is it. You're done leading this country. You don't deserve to lead this country. I'm flabbergasted. I don't even know what to say.